Hello, it's Sammy here. Today I want to talk about a law that will change your sobriety forever. So let's talk about it. The law, what I'm talking about, is the law of polarity. And the law of polarity states that the opposites are not different, but they are different poles of the same thing. So addiction is not different from sobriety. And why this law is important in sobriety? Because it changes the whole approach for sobriety. We don't anymore try to quit from alcohol, but we try to shift the pole of addiction to sobriety. Because the problem with quitting is that when you try to quit something that has been giving you a lot of pleasure and relief, then in that realm you will face tremendous resistance. And the resistance is the very problem. Because the resistance is the last thing that you want when you try to do something challenging like quitting from alcohol. So that is the problem with the quitting model. Now, how we can shift these poles? First, we have to understand what is really addiction. If we think that addiction is only the behavior, then this shifting process can be really hard. So, what is really addiction? The real addiction is in one's psychology, is in the mind. The mind is the cause for the addictive behaviors. So if we can shift our minds, we can shift the poles from addiction to sobriety. So how this process goes? First, we are not looking the behavior, but we are looking the identity behind the behavior. We have to learn to understand this identity, and then we can comprehend it, and then we have to create an environment where this identity can heal from its dysfunctions. And then we basically dissolve the addiction. Because the thing is that the addiction is always solving some kind of problem in our lives. The game is to solve the problem before the addiction. Then the need for addictive behaviors disappears. And that's the art of dissolving the addiction. So let's do a little recap about this. First, we have the law of polarity that states that the opposites are not different but different poles of the same thing. Addiction and sobriety are not different, but actually they are the same thing. Same thing but different poles of the same thing. And this law changes our approach from quitting model to transmutation model. We shift the poles. And how we shift the poles? By understanding our psychology and the causes that makes our addictions in our psychology. And this happens by understanding the identity behind the addiction, and then we learn to understand this identity and create an environment where it can heal from its wounds. And when we do those processes, we basically dissolve the addiction. And that's basically the process. And I guarantee that if you can implement this law in your own life, you will experience a more harmonious sobriety. Because the resistance is really the problem in quitting model, and it can make life feel so much harder. So it's more smarter to shift the poles and focus more on the identity who has the addiction. And when you solve the identity, you will experience like real freedom. But yes, that was my message for this video. So bye bye.